welcome to Ivory Creek Handmade. Today we're going to be going through a custom order that we had and troubleshooting some of the issues we came across as a result of the fragrance that we used, which was an essential oil blend of rose geranium and Palmarosa. And it was quite a learning experience for me, as I don't have much experience of working with any fragrance that rises. I've seen it happen obviously with other soap makers and things like that, but I haven't actually encountered it myself. So this was quite a process for me to work through. And it was for a custom order, which made it all the more stressful. But one of the things that I found from it was that it's definitely helped me as a soap maker. So let's get into the process. What you see in the bucket right now is all of the oils have been added, all of the colorant, which was madder root, olive oil infused madder root was used for the colorant. At this point I've realized that I've put too much in, which is always not a great feeling. But we could have made it work based on the fact that it does tend to fade. But yeah, it felt a bit like it was a bit too much. So I'm already silently panicking at this point. And the fragrance, which was the essential oil blend of rose geranium and Palmarosa, hasn't been added yet. It's just bringing it to an emulsion. And I tend to soap at night, so it can be a bit tricky to identify the early point of emulsion. But we get there in the end. So I'm just mixing it through here, trying not to overdo it, because one of the things that rose geranium and Palmarosa also does is accelerate trace. So yay, fun blend. But yes, so I'm just checking the head of the stick blender at this point to see if it's emulsified. You can see it's still kind of breaking away, like breaking apart a little bit between the oils. So not quite there yet, but we're close. So yes, this order was a custom order from one of our amazing customers that's been with us since the beginning, and it's our biggest order that we've had to date. So it was amazing, and it was 5 different scents and 5 colors that went with that, all natural, so natural colorants, essential oil blends. And yeah, it was a fun thing to do. So I've just added the essential oils at this point, and a couple of clues that tell you that this is probably not gonna go to plan is, you may have not seen them, but they're like little spots sort of appearing. So it's like, I'm sure it's fine, because as you're blending it, it can be a bit tricky to see. So I've mixed them in. I know it's going to accelerate, so I'm trying to make sure that I can mix the fragrance or the essential oils through well without going too far into the trace. And right here is where I should have known that issues were getting worse. So as you can see, they've got some clumps showing on the stick blender and again on the spatula. So I've realized at this point that there has been rising happening in there. As you can see, there are blobs at the top of the spatula there, but it's tricky because the batter is looking not splotchy at this point. Also, it's probably the 3rd double batch I've done, so again, it's getting used to new techniques and things at this point, so it's a lot of things happening at once. And as I'm stirring it, it's not really showing up too much of a problem. But as you'll see, as I start to pour it, it becomes pretty obvious. So as you can see, some lumps going in, but look at these ones coming through. Oh, there goes one. Right about now is when the heart sinks and you just go, oh, bugger. Anyway, into the other one. So I've tried to split it. See the big chunks? Amazing. So yeah, in they go. And what I should have done in hindsight is I should have just put it all back in the bucket, given it another really good blitz, and seeing if that helped smooth it out, because you can tend to blend it out. But again, because it accelerates, it's a bit tricky. So here is the finished soap, and on cutting, and as you can see those little spots, dark spots there, that's the fragrance that hasn't gone through entirely. So there's still pockets as a result of the ricing, and that's not great. And I've just cut it again just to see how far into it goes, because sometimes it might just be an initial bar, but as you can see, it's not. So it was so disappointing to see those fragrance pockets, I guess you could call them. As you can imagine, it's a double batch, so it's 20 bars of soap. Better times have passed, we can laugh about it now. But yes, so the next one, again, just checking how far into it goes. And yeah, it's obviously all the way through it. So I've gone back to the YouTubes, school of YouTube, to see how to manage riced or ricing fragrances, whether that's a fragrance oil or essential oils. And I came across a video that had a pretty good method of working. And they basically put the essential oils in with the oils, blend them through really well, so it's all together in one big homogeneous mass, I guess you could say. And when you add the oil, the fragrance oil, or in situation, the essential oils, then blend as you do it, and that will help prevent it from ricing. So as you can see, I'm blended it really well with the fragrance, the essential oil blend, and now I'm going to add the lye solution. So I'm blending as I add it, which is a bit tricky when you've got two hands and a lot of things happening at once, but just going to add that lye solution in, blitz it as I go, and as you'll see, it actually does a really good job at managing the ricing of the essential oils. One of the disappointing things about this batch was, even though it was a test batch to see if I could get the ricing under control, I hadn't added quite enough of the madder root infusion in this particular one. One of the things with the infusions is the more of the sediment, I guess, or the material you get and add with the oil, the darker it gets. So in this case, I had more of the top oil and less of the sediment. So it resulted in quite a pale pink. It was still beautiful, but I felt it was a bit too pale if you're taking into consideration the fading that happens with natural colors. Yeah, as you can see, got it to light trace. Again, these essential oils accelerate, so we need to take that into consideration. One of the other requests from our customer for this custom order was to have flat tops. Accelerating pricing fragrances with flat tops is quite stressful soap making endeavor, as it turns out, but we worked through it, and as I said, I learned so much from the order and the process, and yeah, it was really good fun. So I'm just going to pour this one, and you'll be able to see there's just velvety, smooth and gorgeous, like no lumps whatsoever. So we know that the technique works. If you put the offending fragrance that you know rises in with the oils, blend it through really super well, and then add the lye solution as you're blending the oils, that tends to really help prevent the ricing from happening. As you can see, it's not the flattest top. You have to pour it quite fluid, just straight flat tops. And unfortunately with the blends we had, that didn't quite work out, so we ended up trimming them all off. I think it was 100 bars in total, and we just trimmed the tops off a little bit just to make sure that they were all consistent, all flat. And we still had a couple in the edges were slightly lower than the trim, so they weren't 100% perfectly flat, but it's handmade soap, so they turned out beautifully, and our customer loved them, so that's what's most important. This is the third attempt, the third batch, where I've thought I've got it sorted. I know how this is going to go. We're going to get it right. And I've been humbled. Again, I learned a lot from the experience, but good Lord, there was some swearing. So again, we've added the colour, which is a bit darker, but not as dark as the first one. So that was a win. So it's got the colour sorted. That's fine. We've added the essential oils into it, and we're giving that a really good blend through. So that's fine. That's as per the last batch to help with the ricing. What I did wrong in this one is, so I've split it off rather than trying to do the double batch in one pot. I've split it into the individual pots just to help control it a bit more. But I've tried to do them at the same time rather than putting one away, doing one, getting that done, putting it in. I've tried to do kind of too much in one go. And it was part of my undoing, I think. One of the other things that's really important is to know the containers you're working with. And one of the things I brought into this particular soap making session is a new container that I put the lye solution in. And two things I learned from this process was, one, the new container I brought into it drips down the side of the container when you've finished pouring or while you're pouring. It's not the best jug. There it is. There's a cheeky jug that caused all the issues. And the other thing was that I had done the 2 batches of lye solution in the one container, and I had not split it off before starting the soap making. So I had 2 lots of lye solution in there instead of 1 per lot. So now I have to weigh that out to make sure I'm getting the right amount of that lye solution in that first soap. And the combination of having to wait as you weigh it out, so your oils aren't being blitzed at this point while you're pouring that, and then the issue of the lye solution running down the edge of the jug, you then have to stop, take care of that quickly, then get back to it. So you can see that it's sitting there for a little bit of time before I start blending. And we know that I have a ricing, accelerating essential oil sitting in that pot as I'm faffing about. Yeah, better times have passed. We can laugh about it now. But yes, so I've pretty much realized my mistake at this point, and I'm panicking a little bit. So I'm going to start to blend it, and it's going to start to come to trace pretty quickly. One of these 2 turned out to not be too bad, that had like a couple of tiny cosmetic spots, not pockets of the essential oil like the original ones had. So we got 1 batch out of these 2 that we could use. Obviously we couldn't use it for the custom order because we only had 1 of the 2. And one of the things I've learned in this is it's really hard to match, to colour match natural colorants. Even if you get the same grams, like the same weight, it's not always going to be the same amount of that pigment that comes through. So you're better off doing the 2 batches at the same time so you get that consistent color throughout. Yes, as I said, I learned a lot during this process. You can see a little bit on the spatula there where it looked like there was a little bit of lumpiness to it, but again, not as much as the first time round. And I think this one might have been the one that turned out okay. What we ended up with, I think, was 5 loaves of soap in the testing that we went through. Of those 5, 2 came out really good. So there was the one test where we worked through the process to deal with the ricing. That turned out absolutely stunning. It was beautiful. So that worked fine. And one of these worked out really well. The other one was okay, but the rising was a bit more evident in one than the other. So we just put one that was fine, we kept, and the other one, along with the original 2 at the beginning, we shredded up into shreds, and I rebatched those a couple of weeks later, and yeah, made some floating whipped soap, which is always fun. And that's just been sitting on the curing rack, so it didn't go to waste, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you're worried about the sheer amount of soap that we've done and didn't work out, don't worry, we've just thrown it in the bin. We did use it. I mean, it's rose geranium and Palmarosa essential oils are not cheap. And it turned out in the rebatch we didn't need to add any additional fragrance to it, which was great. So you win some, you lose some. This is the second batch that we're doing now, and this one was probably the one that didn't go as well, because again, there's a time. This one had less time delay in the weighing out because it was what was left in the pot. So it might have actually been this one that worked well. Anyway, I can't remember, but one of them was fine and the other one was a bit less so. As far as lessons learned from this, it's know the jugs you're working with. Make sure they don't really leak, but they don't sort of run down the side if you're trying to pour slowly into another jug. Also, if you're doing 2 batches and time is a factor in what you're doing, it is always a good idea to have them split out instead of the 2 or however many batches of the lye solution you need. So if you need, say, 2 batches, have 2 jugs with each batch weighed out already. That way you don't have to worry about taking time to weigh it out, make sure it's right. Because with the lye solution, you don't want to get that amount wrong, because even though you have a super fat and we work with, say, a 5% super fat, you just don't want to risk going 1 or 2 grams over. If time is of the essence, split out your batches into individual jugs for the lye solution. Saves you time, saves you panic. And yeah, the batter when it works well is just so beautiful and velvety, and it's just gorgeous. But it's not always easy to see the rising in it though, was one of the things I found. So it tends to be as you're pouring it that you see that there's been rising. And at that point, because it is already so thick, it's not going to be really easy to then put it back and try to blend it out further. But here we go, pouring the second one. Gorgeous. This set of essential oils would work really well if you're doing layered soaps. So if you didn't want to have to wait around for your layers to set up in between, it would be a really great one to kick that along and get that layers set. This is the final batch where all of the things I've learned have come together to create a beautiful batch, 2 batches of rose geranium and Palmarosa pink soap. That's just gorgeous. So as you can see, I've got 1 batch of the lye solution ready to go. I am just, hopeless, to be honest. So here I am, I've got everything in the pot ready to go. I'm blending the oils, making sure that they're really well combined with the essential oils. And now I'm going to add the lye solution, and I'm going to blitz that a little bit. So just pulse the blender a little bit, just enough to keep it moving while keeping in mind about the acceleration. So I'm just blitzing for a few seconds, then stirring, and then blitzing, and then stirring. And this has worked really well. So I'm conscious at this point I don't want it to get too thick on me so that the texture's a problem on top, which you just can't get around that. It's going to accelerate, there's going to be texture, you just got to work it out. So scraping off the head of the blender. Again, you don't want to waste any of that gorgeous soap. And it looks a little bit lumpy on the spatula at this point. But as it turns out, that extra mixing seems to have just, it's more just the fact that it's thick as opposed to that it rised. So that was a relief. And I'm just making sure I've got all of those oils blended in nicely because it did start to accelerate and I didn't want to blend it more than I had to. So this is just to make sure that it did all fold in nicely, that I didn't miss anything out. And it's looking absolutely gorgeous. The color's beautiful. It looks a bit more peachy here because I soap at night, so the lighting is not the best, but I'll show you at the end. You'll see a photo of how the soaps turned out. And although I try, when I tap the soap molds down to try to get air bubbles out, I do try to do that really well, but it's usually also 10 or 11 o'clock at night, so my daughter is also sleeping as well as my husband. So I try to tap it down as much as I can without waking up the household. And that one is done. I always find the texture of this reminds me of like the Dolce de Leche caramel, or the caramel top and fill from Nestle. It's just that gorgeous texture. Love it. Thicker than I tend to like the soap, so I don't often get the batter that gets this thick. But yeah, it's lovely. Velvety, gorgeous. And that's the finished bars. Beautiful pink. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear them. Well, read them. So put them down in the comment section. And hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.